Hey there, welcome to the fourth episode of Sound Art Sunday. This week we'll finish up our historical overview of sound art. Back in the first episode, I attempted to define what sound art was, and I used the words of Max Neuhaus to do so. Max says, in music, sound is the work. In art, sound is the means by which I make artwork. So we can classify a piece of art under the umbrella term sound art if sound is the medium being used. But there are a myriad number of ways that sound art takes form. Here are some of the forms that sound art can take as a contemporary art practice. I'm not going to read through all these. Pause the video and take the time to read the list if you'd like. Let's go on and take a look at some of these different categories of sound art while doing a deep dive into the contemporary issues, both social and political, that artists are exploring. We're going to start with a sound art piece that is an installation. In other words, the artist creates a total environment that you walk into. The installation that we're going to look at is by Camille Normant, and it was for the 2015 Venice Biennale. Normant's work focuses on something she calls cultural psychoacoustics. So how does sound affect our bodies? And how have we culturally responded to our body's responses to sound? Take a look at the visuals of the space before I introduce you to the sounds you'll experience while you're in there. The title of the piece, Rapture, refers to being in a heightened state, a state of intense excitation to the point where you're vibrating with excitement. That state has historically been monitored by cultural institutions as being something unhealthy and something that should be censored. The sounds heard in the installation are two notes that are sung that in the medieval church were felt to be the devil's notes and were banned. And the other sound you'll hear is something called the glass harmonicum, invented by Benjamin Franklin. It's a series of crystal bowls nested inside each other, and your finger touches the rim of it and makes that sound that crystal can make when you do that. And that sound also was found to be perverse in some way and was censored.
The starting point for this installation was vibration, this idea of something being vibrated, stirred by something else. Sound is itself a vibration. We usually think of it as going through the air, but in this installation, I move the sound through objects, through glass. I vibrate the glass. We call that vibration excitation.
Rapture is only one letter away from the word rupture. High levels of excitement lead to that kind of destruction. And in fact, Normant played with frequencies until those glass windows that you see in the pavilion broke. They were overly excited at the molecular level and they ruptured. The next artist we're going to look at is Montreal-born Benny Nemirovsky-Ramsey. Nemirovsky-Ramsey, I really just want to call him Benny. I think I'm just going to call him Benny. It's a long last name. In Benny's work, he looks at the gender of voices, the space between male and female voices, adult voices, children's voices, human voices, animal voices. He too works with sound installations as well as accompanying video sometimes. And in the piece I'm going to show you, he relies on text. The text is simply a list of queer artist names, artists that Benny would have loved to have had as mentors. These artists are inaccessible to him as mentors. They have died either due to some violence towards them or due to the AIDS epidemic. So in the garden, we can see and read the list of names, but from a megaphone in the trees, we hear what sounds like bird calls. But they're not birds. It's Benny's own voice made to sound like birds as he speaks their names, calling out to them in the night. In sound sculpture, The viewer can often interact with the piece itself to make some sort of a noise, or nature will have some sort of effect on the piece, again, to create some sort of a noise. In the work of Anishinaabe artist Rebecca Belmore, both occur. In 1991, she created a piece called Speaking to Their Mother, an enormous megaphone that traveled all across Canada.
Speak out to Mother Earth and to talk about her and to her.
More than 25 years later, she created a series of pieces that responded to that initial work. These pieces were called Landmarks and were located in 4 different parks across Canada. Belmore ensures that each piece is respectful of the place it's in and visually works with the space. But what it also does is acts as a reverse megaphone. It takes the sounds of the space and amplifies it, and you are asked to listen. Are you listening to Mother Earth? Because Belmore is saying she has a voice too, and you need to pay attention. Rebecca Belmore's sound sculptures amplify a voice we need to hear. The work of our next artist amplifies the voice of those who cannot hear. Christina Sun is a deaf artist, and her work about sound falls into the categories of performance and drawings and videos. Her work attempts to deconstruct social conventions around sound. What are some of the social etiquettes we have regarding how we hear things? Maybe as hearing people, we need to check our hearing privilege. This drawing, done in 2018, is called Degrees of My Deaf Rage. And the rage is at our not knowing anything about deaf culture. She's trying to make deaf ideas understandable to us, objectifying sound in her world and displaying it in a whole new light. Christina Sun also uses concepts around musical notation. She relies on written language, American Sign Language, and the use of the body to get her ideas across. This piece is called 6 Types of Waiting in Berlin, what she hears and feels in certain public spaces. Her work asks the question, is sound only a hearing person's thing? Is it not a multi-sensory experience that deaf people still have access to? She also does work around the closed captioning in TV and film. She says lots is left unsaid in those captions, and she endeavors to make sure that the full sonic experience is available to deaf people. And it changes the way we think about the sounds that we're not hearing in those pieces. What other groups' experiences could we hear through sound art? Michelle Pearson Clark is a Black artist from Toronto, and her piece called Sucks Teeth has just been purchased by the National Art Gallery in Ottawa. The action of sucking teeth is a non-verbal gesture that is West African in origin, but shared throughout the entire Black diaspora. It signifies a negative response, dissatisfaction, frustration, anger, irritation. Here's what it sounds like as heard and seen in Pearson's work, Sucks Teeth. As Canadians, we live under the rosy assumption that anti-Black racism is not such a big deal here in Canada. But the dissatisfaction, frustration, and anger that I hear in Sucks Teeth is telling me, think again. The next artist we're going to talk about looks at sounds that the powers that be hope we aren't listening to. The Dubai artist Lawrence Abu Hamden is a sound artist who calls himself a private ear for public information. His sound art practice uses sound to monitor governments and to make sure that they're not abusing their powers. In May 2014, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 2 teenagers in the occupied West Bank. They said they'd used rubber bullets. That was an allowable ammunition. But then Lawrence Abu Hamden got to work. In Abu Hamden's piece Earshot, he uses a technique that visualizes sound frequencies. By making this detailed acoustic analysis, it was confirmed that they had used rubber-coated live ammunition, attempting to disguise the acoustics of the ammunition they were using. This acoustic information becomes the sound that we hear in his installation piece that acts like a firing range, the acoustic spectrographs coming towards us like targets. The Hong Kong artist Samson Young looks at how sound can be used as a weapon. Like our last artist, Abu Hamden, Samson Young uses the spectrograms, the visual spectrograms generated by sounds, in order to take it apart and examine it more fully. Samson Young's piece, Nocturne, was a reaction to the US attacks in the Middle East from the time of the Gulf War all the way through to their attacks on ISIS. Young watched 6 hours of the bombings in the Middle East, and from there generated spectrograms of those noises. He sees explosions as vehicles of overwhelming information, of so much condensed sound that you can't fully experience them. The spectrograms allow him to study and take apart the sound more fully. From there, he created a piece that was part visual information, part video, part live performance. Using objects you find around the house, he recreates the sounds of the carnage. I'm going to end with this thought. What's the difference between saying, I see what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying? Perhaps hearing goes a little deeper. And maybe when a person, a group, an idea is heard, maybe when it's heard, that's when it's truly seen. Thanks so much for going on this journey of sound art history with me. Next week, we'll start to reveal the project the critical mass has in store for Port Hope. We'll see you then.